Well, good morning everyone. Welcome to our webinar on workforce planning. I'm David Smith, Managing Partner of MHA Henderson Logie. I hope you're continuing to stay healthy and safe. Everyone is talking about workforce planning at the moment and talking about returning to work. In normal times, it's something I recommend to clients for taking a more strategic approach to building your workforce. It should complement your strategic plan. But obviously these are not normal times, and this kind of planning is more important than ever. As I said, everyone's talking about it, so this morning we'll take you through practical steps to create plans and put them into action. We hope there's something for everyone to take away, no matter which phase of the crisis your business is in, be it survival mode, whether you're now pivoting your business and adapting your model and developing products and services for the evolving market, or whether you're now on the front foot as the market slowly returns in some areas and rapidly in others. And no matter the severity of the impact on your business or the size of your business, hopefully we have something for you today. What I've seen speaking to many clients, contacts, and other business owners and leaders in the last 12 weeks is that no two situations are the same. As government guidance is released and changes are made to the easing of lockdown, the knock-on effects are different for everyone because we all have unique circumstances and all have unique needs. So this morning you'll hear lots of great ideas, concepts and examples, and I'm sure you'll take these ideas back and put them into your own specific situation with the aim of having your business or organisation ready with improved capabilities, the right capacity, clear strategies and a stable business to meet the emerging market needs. We have two speakers this morning, Fiona Doctor and David Archibald. Fiona leads MHA Henderson Logie's HR team, and she also created and heads up our HR outsourcing service. She works with small and medium-sized businesses. She takes the pain out of HR, giving you the time back to work on the day-to-day running of your business. Fiona will take you through the practical steps you need to take now to navigate through the next few months as restrictions are lifted and the coronavirus job retention scheme is reduced and then comes to an end in October. She'll also look at the strategies arising from workforce planning, such as redeployment, redundancies, upskilling, recruitment and retention of talent. Our second speaker is David Archibald. David leads our Internal Audit division, and he is going to share his experiences of conducting wide-scale workforce planning with a cross-section of commercial and not-for-profit clients across Scotland, and what is required to get positive outcomes for employers and for employees. He'll ask you some challenging questions for you to think about your own processes. After Fiona and David have given their insights, there'll be an opportunity for a live Q&A session. So if you can post questions in the chat function at the right-hand side of the screen during the speaker sessions, we'll pick these up after the two speakers have finished. So over to you, Fiona.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to take you through the 6 steps of workforce planning I use and highlight some of the benefits this will bring to your business. Workforce planning is relevant to all businesses, irrespective of size, as it helps you understand how to best support your business and workforce. It doesn't have to be complicated and can be adjusted to suit the size and maturity of your business. Workforce planning has historically concentrated on long-term business planning. However, in these unpredictable and challenging times, we are having to adapt to and manage significant and often rapid change, whether that be a result of COVID-19, Brexit or digitisation. In a nutshell, Workforce planning is about getting the right number of people with the right skills employed in the right place at the right time, at the right cost and on the right contract to deliver your business's short and long-term objectives. Done effectively, workforce planning can help you reduce payroll costs, help your business respond to challenging customer needs, target inefficiencies, improve productivity and quality outputs, as well as shaping your talent management and employee retention initiatives, which ultimately will improve your business performance. I'd like to spend the next few minutes taking you through the various stages of a workforce planning activity and give you some tips as to the types of questions you should be considering, the information you should be reviewing to help you work out what that means for your business. I have a slide which I would like to talk you through. Step 1 is to understand the organisation and its environment. Begin by talking to your managers or trusted advisors about where your business is going and any resourcing concerns. This will help you investigate what is going on, what's working well and what might work better. If things feel very uncertain, work through some simple scenarios to find out where actions may need to be contingent on unfolding events. Things to consider at this stage would be: what does your business structure look like now, and what are you likely to need in the future? What are your plans to increase productivity? Are there intentions to introduce or update technology? And how well has the business operated over the last few months during lockdown? And what new processes will you wish to retain going forward? Also consider the key external factors impacting your business. For example, the impact of COVID-19 lockdown on your business and the wider economy, automation, or pending legislation such as the forthcoming immigration bill, which may restrict access to and flow of an overseas workforce you have come to rely on. The next step would be to analyse your workforce. I would normally start by considering the employees in post. Identify the knowledge, skills, abilities, demographics, talent profiles, type of contracts, as well as the current gaps between demand and supply. You might also wish to consider other parameters such as competitors within the area. Depending on the size of your business, this can be a very simple step as you know your workforce and have all the information to hand. Larger businesses may have to obtain this information from finance, HR or their department heads. War on talent has been a key issue for many businesses over recent years, and whilst the impact of COVID-19 is likely to ease this pressure, it is important to retain your top talent, and we shouldn't be complacent. The CIPD's latest quarterly labour market outlook, which was started a week after the implementation of the job retention scheme, noted 40% of 18 to 24-year-old workers are considering a career change, and 25% of 45 to 54-year-olds are considering a change in role post-pandemic. Step 3 is to determine your future needs. If workforce planning is about getting the right people with the right skills in the right roles at the right time and at the right costs, you need to be asking yourselves the right questions, such as, in terms of skills, do you have the leadership in place to deliver your strategy? What are the critical capabilities, skills and competencies to help you drive your strategy? And what is the impact of digitisation on processes, people development and recruitment? This can cause decline in some roles and demand for different skills in others. In terms of size, is predicted staff workload significantly increasing or decreasing? Are technologies driving changes to your structure or productivity? This can dramatically impact the number of people you need. And have you identified roles critical to achieving your business's objectives, and are there any challenges in filling these? In terms of cost, what are your people costs? Are people costs likely to rise in line with expected revenues? And what are the costs of hiring and developing capability? In terms of location, are people in different job families in the right locations? Are there sufficient people in that surrounding area to fill any gaps? And do you need as much business or office space going forward? And finally, shape. Are your core capabilities strong enough? Is distribution across job grades in line with requirements? And is there an appropriate balance of operations, innovation, project development and managerial positions? Step 4 is then to identify your workforce gaps against future needs. And this information can be attained by following steps 1 to 3, which will help you identify the gaps you need to address. These include gaps where the likely availability of people is lower than the needs, so more staff need to be brought in or developed. Negative gaps where there are more people in certain groups than needed, so you may need to consider retrenchment or redeployment. And gaps in skills but not in numbers, and training or reskilling might be the answer. Step 5 is then to identify and implement actions to address your shortages, surplus or skills mismatches. Having identified your gaps and action areas, the next stage is to agree the specific actions needed to close those gaps. And there are a range of options available to businesses to support them meet their needs. The most common are job redesign, which makes better use of people or reduces cost by shifting the skills mix of higher skilled to lower skilled people within the same kind of work, multi-skilling your workforce, or using technology to replace some labour activities. Changing contractual arrangements to find people or increase flexibility. Reducing the need for recruitment by improving retention through strong leadership, building and strengthening internal talent pipelines through upskilling, talent management and succession planning, or redundancy or redeployment. For many businesses, the short to medium term focus is going to be the need to reduce people costs or headcount. If you believe the gaps are short term, the most appropriate course of action at this point would be to retain your workforce but reduce people costs. Many of us have responded to the COVID-19 crisis by making use of the job retention scheme. The scheme has been a massive learning curve for all of us, and that is set to continue as we move into the flexible furlough scheme. Today is the last day for new employees to start their first period of 3-week furlough. Updated guidance is due to be published on Friday, which will hopefully answer questions such as how normal hours should be calculated for those who work variable hours, will we still be able to operate a rotational furlough scheme, and how will the holiday payment calculations work. Throughout this month, I would suggest you start to think about how you will use the flexible scheme from the 1st of July. Consider the additional costs to the business to see if this is affordable. You should consider creating a system to track which days employees are working and furloughed so that you are ready for the 1st of July, and create a template letter to confirm working and furlough days and issue first flexible furlough agreements ready for 1st of July. Other common employer responses to the current crisis include extending home working, recruitment freezes, pay freezes, or cutting bonuses and training budgets. If your business needs to consider longer-term workforce reduction, then you can achieve this through voluntary redundancies or compulsory redundancies. You need to ensure you follow a fair consultation process in accordance with the ACAS guidelines and consider the full workforce, not just those placed on furlough. There is a link appearing on the screen now which will enable you to obtain further guidance. There is no statutory timescale for employers planning to make fewer than 20 employees redundant. However, it is important you implement a fair redundancy process which allows employees time to have meaningful consultation. It is worth noting the timescales for any employer who intends to commence larger scale redundancy programmes prior to the 31st of July. If you are making 100 or more employees redundant, you would need to commence your 45-day consultation period by the 16th of June. If you're making more than 20 employees but less than 100 employees redundant, you need to commence your 30-day consultation period by the 1st of July. It is possible to commence redundancy consultation whilst people are on furlough leave, although redundancy payment costs would fall to the employer. Finally, step 6 is to monitor and evaluate actions. Create your one-page plan, set your SMART objectives, provide support and information to your management team if appropriate, and regularly review progress against those objectives with your management team or trusted advisors. In summary, having the right people with the right skills in the right roles at the right time and the right cost is what will ultimately deliver the right results for your business. By taking a proactive, methodical approach to workforce planning and working your way through the 6 steps, you will understand where the business risks and opportunities are going to come from and how you can ensure you have the resources you need to respond successfully to whatever future scenario unfolds. Thank you. I would now like to hand you over to David Archibald.
Good morning. As David mentioned, my name's David Archibald and I head up the Internal Audit Department within MHA Henderson Logie. So we deliver internal audit services to a wide range of commercial and not-for-profit bodies across Scotland. And the world of internal audits changed dramatically in the last 10 years or so as the risks for organisations have diversified and become much more complex. The days of auditing the payroll system every year have now gone. We now provide internal audit coverage across all aspects of organisational activity, not just the core financial systems. So in short, we follow the risks facing our clients. It's fair to say that in recent years, the audit of workforce planning arrangements has become an increasingly important part of our internal audit activity, as the risks have increased around recruiting, retaining, and developing the workforce to meet the changing needs and demands placed on our clients. So what I aim to do this morning is to give you a practical insight into the types of issues which we are identifying on the ground when we conduct internal audit reviews of workforce planning. I'll then go on to explain the types of recommendations which we have made to help these organisations tackle the challenges which they're facing. From my perspective, there's never been a better time to focus on workforce planning. Most organisations are currently reviewing their strategic objectives, they're re-evaluating the markets they've been traditionally operating in, they're challenging and recasting the assumptions which underpin their financial plans for the future. And most organisations, I think, have had an enhanced focus around technology as the restrictions on social distancing and travel applied during lockdown have ramped up the reliance on the IT infrastructure to conduct our day-to-day work and to continue to interact with our customers and clients. Our internal audits of workforce planning arrangements recognise that having an adequate, experienced, skilled, knowledgeable and effective workforce is key to the effective operation of any organisation. I regularly read statements along the lines of staff are our greatest asset, but what does this actually mean in reality? Maintaining an effective workforce requires appropriate recruitment, retention and performance measures to be implemented and monitored to ensure that they are operating effectively, and our audits aim to identify whether this is being delivered in practice. So the core questions which we pose to our internal audit clients and which you could perhaps ask of your own organisation are as follows. Are the HR policies and procedures in place covering staff, recruitment, retention, development and succession planning fit for purpose? Are your recruitment processes robust and are recruitment procedures being followed in practice? Do you have a range of measures to retain staff which are reported on and evaluated to consider whether these measures are effective or whether changes are required? Is there a robust performance management process with unsatisfactory performance followed up on a timely basis, and is exceptional performance appropriately rewarded? Is there a formal approach to the identification of staff training needs, training provision and evaluation of training? Does your HR system provide a robust framework for the administration of recruitment, retention, staff development and succession planning processes with reporting functionality that helps you make agile decisions? And last but not least, my personal favourite, is there an appropriate succession planning framework in place for managing the loss of key members of staff? Now, in conducting these internal audit reviews across a diverse range of clients over the last few years, some clear trends have emerged. Sometimes what appear to be basic common sense building blocks of effective workforce planning arrangements are either absent or are malfunctioning. So, 7 examples of the type of recurring issues we have come across are as follows. Number 1, out-of-date HR policies and procedures which do not reflect current practices and which have not been effectively communicated to staff. Number 2, low completion rates for mandatory training, unless of course there's been a conscious effort to force completion. So a good example of that would be around the work that a lot of our clients did on GDPR back in 2018. Number 3, a focus on business as usual organisational development capability rather than equipping the workforce for the future challenges that lie ahead. Number 4, a lack of a formal evaluation process to establish whether learning has been embedded and whether the desired learning outcomes have been achieved. Number 5, poor management of underperformance with a lack of decisive action to appropriately manage underperforming staff out of the organisation. Number 6, a focus on like-for-like recruitment without taking the time to consider the opportunities to change the post to reflect the identified needs going forward. And number 7, the absence of any sort of formal succession planning framework, even for key strategic staff. I'm routinely advised that informal succession planning arrangements are in place, but what that tends to be is that it revolves around a historic example of managing to cope or muddling through when previous key personnel have left the organisation. However, there are 2 big overarching issues which I routinely encounter in conducting reviews of workforce planning. The first of these is a lack of connectivity between the overarching strategic plan and the underpinning workforce plan, financial plan, IT development plan and estates plan. Now, I've worked in strategic planning and performance in a previous life, so I understand why these situations arise, because they tend to develop organically. However, what has become apparent is the fact that there is often no meaningful connection between the workforce plan and in particular the financial plan or the IT development plan, because they're often developed at different times with no cognizance taken of the interdependencies. So this means that the aspirations set out within the workforce plan aren't necessarily aligned with the funding and the IT capacity required to deliver. Now, if we apply the principles of now, where, how, then most clients understand the now position. So they have access to a range of workforce data which provides a breakdown of the current workforce and matches this against identified need. It also allows hotspots to be identified in terms of tranches of key staff who may be projected to retire at the same time, for example. So this allows plans to be put in place to train or recruit suitable replacements. And in terms of the where, I regularly hear statements about new ways of working and a realisation that we need staff to work differently in the future. And the new phrase that we're all using at the moment is about the new normal. But what does that actually mean? Often there's a high level aspiration set out in the strategic plan around developing new ways of work to improve efficiency and to leverage IT capability. However, the piece of the jigsaw that's routinely missing is the how. It's very rare for us to conduct a review of workforce planning and to be presented with a fully worked up delivery plan which sets out A, the future skills required of the workforce, and that's not just about the numbers of staff. B, how existing staff will be retrained to take on changing roles. And C, how any changes in demand and interdependencies around IT and estates capacity will be managed. The second big overarching issue is the absence of a robust scenario planning model to link the workforce plan to your change in risk profile and therefore the change in demands placed on the organisation. And again, this isn't just about numbers of staff. This is about the core skills and competencies required to deliver your corporate objectives. As David mentioned earlier, there's a lot of talk at the moment about being able to pivot and adapt, but this requires the right staff with the appropriate range of skills and motivations with access to the appropriate level of IT capability. There's been an increased focus during lockdown around online learning and development, but how focused has this activity been in terms of preparing your organisation for the challenges which lie ahead in the new normal? The flexibility to vary the range of training opportunities to meet specific identified needs and the ability to scale this training up and down will be vital for all organisations in order to meet changing demands which they will face going forward. So to summarise, the recommendations which we have delivered to help our clients address the weaknesses identified in their workforce planning arrangements are as follows. Ensure that HR policies and procedures reflect current practices and that these have been effectively communicated to all of your staff. Make sure that if training is classified as mandatory, then there's 100% compliance, and for me that applies equally to refresher training for existing staff just as much as induction training for new recruits. Design a flexible organisational development capability which is aligned to the future needs of the organisation, not just your current needs. Introduce a formal evaluation process to establish whether learning has been embedded and whether the desired learning outcomes have been achieved. There's no point in spending time and money training staff if it doesn't deliver the anticipated outcomes. Make sure you have a robust process for identifying underperformance. And dealing with it appropriately. Also make sure that there is a mechanism for identifying exceptional performance, which is supported by a suitable rewards package. When posts do become vacant, take the opportunity to hit the pause button and consider the future needs of the organisation before filling the post with a like-for-like replacement. Take the opportunity which the current pandemic has presented to revisit the overarching strategic plan, and also make sure that the plans or strategies which underpin the strategic plan are aligned. There's no point in having a workforce plan which makes assumptions around funding, IT capability and estates capacity which just won't be there. Develop a scenario planning model which allows you to review the future shape of the workforce to fit projected demand and changes in the way your customers or clients will want to do business with you in the future. And lastly, please introduce a formal succession planning framework, even if it's just for key strategic staff. I see this as a huge risk for lots of organisations in the current situation, as key staff take time to reevaluate their career aspirations and to recalibrate their work-life balance and life goals. In my opinion, the risk of losing key people, and remember these are the people who properly understand your business and will help steer the organisation through the challenges which lie ahead, have never been greater. Muddling through is not going to be a viable option. By applying these principles, we won't be able to guarantee success, but from my perspective, it will certainly help to turn the mantra of staff being our most important asset from theory into practice. I'll now hand you back to David and he can sort of wrap up the session.
Thank you, Fiona, and thank you, David, for your insights. The 6 steps that you walked us through, Fiona, and your summary graphic are really practical and relevant for every type of organisation, whatever the size. I think, understanding the organisation and its environment, reviewing your workforce, determining your future needs, identifying workforce gaps against those future needs, really important. Identifying actions to implement to address these shortages, surpluses or skills mismatches, and monitor and evaluate your actions. David, your practical examples highlighted the positive outcomes that can be achieved. It's great to hear some real life examples so that we can, all of us, put it into context for our own organisations. I'm sure we all recognise the elements of what you described and came up with our own ideas and certainly recognised situations. In particular, you asked us some challenging questions for us to consider about our own processes, highlighted 7 areas of weakness that you experience when you're working with organisations. And I think, again, they're relevant for all of us to have a focus on our HR policies, our succession planning, recruitment, retention of staff, our training, and what's the purpose of our training and does it fit with what we're actually trying to achieve and is it aligned? From my own experiences, I like to start with drawing an organisational chart for staff in the business as it is now, and then creating a new chart based on our strategic plan or client strategic plan. It's a really useful way of visually identifying your gaps because actions flow from this, whether it be training and development of key employees, recruitment, where you're overstaffed, can there be redeployment, as Fiona was saying, or possible redundancies? And so just to wrap up, a couple of tips from me. If you've got a gap in your chart, please don't put a square peg in a round hole. Leave the gap, then focus on fast tracking the right person if they're already in your organisation through training, coaching, mentoring, and just development of them. If that person is not in your organisation, you need a recruitment plan. Don't put the wrong person in the role. It never works in the long run, and in my experience, it's generally much more problematic to fix. Review your chart to see if you're relying on certain individuals to too great a degree. What's your risk mitigation strategy? As David was talking about, your scenario plan. What if one of these key individuals was to go under a bus? Or as Fiona said in her statistics, and David too, what if that person now considers a career change? And don't backfill. Don't have the chief exec, don't have the managing director, the owner stepping back into roles, because you'll get much better value from them doing their own job and doing it well, and much better value from finding the right person for where you've got the gap. So as I said at the start, we've built in some time for questions. We've received some from you in advance, and so we'll pick up on some of these just now. If you've got any more questions, having heard fully from Fiona and David, please do ask them in the Q&A section on the right-hand side of the screen. So just pick up the first one. Maybe this one for you, Fiona. What happens if staff do not want to return to work when the business asks them to?
I've certainly heard some large retailers are having these types of problems. Some people might be anxious about safety and returning to the workplace. So our advice would be to talk to your staff about any concerns they have and try to resolve those issues together. I mean, there may well be valid reasons, such as they are at a high risk of getting a severe illness if they catch coronavirus, or have caring responsibilities, or are living with someone who is shielding. As part of our own return to the office plans, we've proactively reached out to our staff to get their views and to determine if they fall into one of those categories, and this will obviously help us plan accordingly. ACAS advise that employers should listen to concerns from staff and try to take steps to protect everyone. If someone still does not wish to come back to work, and if it's feasible for them to do so, perhaps you might like to consider offering them time off as holiday or unpaid leave. Ultimately, any decision needs to be based on business need, and you don't have to agree to this. But I would advise that you keep notes of your decision-making process. And ultimately, if someone refuses to attend work without a valid reason, it could result in disciplinary action being taken.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you. Just another one for you, actually, Fiona. Should redundancy be based on normal pay or furloughed pay?
Okay, I'm happy to answer that, and there is a bit of dubiety around some of this, but I'll talk through what the guidance is so far. The Job Retention Scheme guidance does say that redundancy rights should not be affected by furlough, and certainly the CIPD legal team advice is that an employee entitled to statutory minimum notice should be given full notice pay based on the statutory notice period and not furlough salary. They also advise that contractual notice pay should be based on employees' full salary, although there are complex legal arguments about whether notice pay should be based at 80%. The CIPD's view is that unless the government covers the above issues expressly, employment tribunals may well sympathise with employees. So the safest course is for employers to pay notice pay for furloughed employees at the normal contractual rate of pay and to calculate redundancy pay based on this rate too. My advice would be that if you are considering paying less than the 100%, then seek legal advice or talk to ACAS. I'd also add that notice can be issued whilst employees are on furlough, and certainly the guidance at the moment is that employers would need to top up to the 20%, so in other words, the employee would receive the full 100%, and employers would need to pay redundancy pay. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. Next question we've got, probably I could read this in a couple of different ways, so I'm going to put it to both David and then on to Fiona thereafter. How to undertake risk assessment in the new landscape? Are there any templates that would be useful to start from? So David, perhaps you could look at that in the context of risk assessment in the new world, and Fiona, maybe you can talk about risk assessment specifically about going back to workplace, whether it be office, factory, etc. Over to you, David.
Yeah, so if I pick it up from a sort of generic sort of risk management perspective, it's fair to say that there's probably two different approaches have been taken by the clients that I deal with. So some clients have created their own separate sort of COVID risk register or action plan, if you like, that shows how they're sort of managing the situation on an ongoing basis. But I think for most of my clients that have a sort of an existing mechanism for managing risk, they already had risks identified around maintaining, a stable workforce with the right skills, all of the things that Fiona touched on earlier on. And effectively what they've done is sort of apply COVID to that, and thinking about the impact the pandemic is having on that particular risk. So, where we're seeing that changing is that, the mitigating actions obviously are changing as we progress through from the current situation into the sort of transition phase as you start to prepare for staff going back, and then preparing for, the new normal, as we've touched on earlier on. So, there's a lot of work going on there. Clearly, people, are going back and revising their original assumptions and looking at all their plans, and obviously, the risks flow from those. So, probably the main thing that's changed are the mitigating actions and also the frequency, if you like, that these risks are being looked at, because clearly, as things evolve, the risks shift and change. But I'll hand you over to Fiona now, and she'll sort of, take you through maybe more sort of the types of models that can be used for a sort of a risk assessment in terms of the sort of, I assume what we're talking about here is that sort of transitioning back into the return to the workplace.
Yeah, thanks, David. Basically, I was just going to give some useful links that you might wish to consider, and certainly health and safety is going to be very important. And if you have 5 or more employees, you have to have a risk assessment drawn up. So I would certainly recommend everybody does take the opportunity to complete risk assessments. The Health and Safety Executive have a number of examples and some good guidance on their website, which you might like to consider. Also, the government website has guidance which covers a range of different sectors, so that may be factories, offices, and other types of work environments. So that would be another useful website to review. I do actually have a template through the CIPD, which is non-specific, but I would be happy to share with anyone if that was of interest. And if anybody wants to get in touch after the session, then I'd be happy to forward that on.
Thank you both. Thanks, Fiona. Thanks, David. It's always good watching our advisors thinking on their feet as the questions come in thick and fast. I think, Fiona, you perhaps answered this one in your presentation, but do employees have to be furloughed as at 30th of June to be eligible for the flexible furlough scheme?
So any employee who was furloughed at any point prior to the 30th of June can be flexibly furloughed from the 1st of July, which obviously gives employers further options to arrange rotational patterns to meet operational demand.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the answer is no, really, but they have to have been furloughed at some point prior to the 30th of June. Right,
okay, thank you. Got a specific one here, but we'll try and make it slightly more generic. Regarding redundancies, if there's been a kind of diminution in business, reduced turnover due to the limitations resulting from the pandemic, can we make people redundant if currently they are on sick leave?
Is that one for David or for me?
I think that's one for you, Fiona. David's looking rather scared about that one. So.
Okay, I'm happy to give some non-specific guidance on this, but would suggest that obviously that tailored guidance is sought based on the full facts in question. It is possible to make a member of your team redundant if they are off sick. However, it would be inappropriate to base the decision to make someone redundant on their health, as this could lead to claims of unfair dismissal and disability discrimination. As an employer, you'll need to show your decision to make a member of staff redundant was genuine and based on a legitimate business case. It can either be due to a significant reduction of work or the complete closure of a business. And it's vital to follow the correct redundancy procedure and ensure an employee on any sickness-related time off receives treatment no different to any other employee. Does that answer the question?
I think that's a nice general answer to it, and I would agree if somebody's looking for more specific advice, then should seek that. more formally than in this environment. A couple left, so really have you think on your feet. Probably both of them for you again, Fiona. First one, can we bring part-time work across the board due to the downturn in work? So, as we restart the business, can we do it on a part-time basis?
A couple of thoughts with that one. If you have furloughed all your workforce prior to the 30th of June, then you can certainly take advantage of the flexible furlough scheme, which is due to come in. And there's, as I said earlier, there is guidance coming in on Friday, so we should have a much better, or hopefully a much better understanding of what that might look like and the flexibility that it does afford employers. If you haven't furloughed anyone previously and you're looking to bring in part-time working, then your first port of call is to look at your contract of employment and consider what flexibility you have built in there. You certainly couldn't implement this unilaterally. It would have to be done through consultation and by mutual agreement. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Fiona. And just, we're going to wrap up in just a second. So the last one here is a question around working remotely. There is plans for returning to shops, factories, units, and offices. But while there's still going to be a continued working from home and people, for a variety of reasons, wanting to continue to work from home, so long as they can be productive working from home. Other issues regarding the use of somebody's residence as a workplace, and specifically about insurance planning regulations. And it's something that clearly we're looking at as well. And at the moment where we've got temporary workplace at home, but as that becomes a more permanent, then I think we're looking at more structured workplace assessments and consideration that people are, for their own health, it works for them. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, any other thoughts, Fiona?
I mean, I think when we all went into remote working and most of us brought our laptops home and started working from home, it was considered a temporary arrangement, and the health and safety guidance was that you don't have to complete risk assessments for anyone if it is a temporary arrangement. However, at what point does that stop being a temporary arrangement and become the norm? And I think we're probably getting close to that point where we do have to start considering implementing risk assessments and asking staff to complete risk assessments. Insurance, again, I think that is something that will need to be considered, and certainly I'd be encouraging employers to talk to either their insurance broker or their insurance provider with regards to that.
That's super. Again, if anybody's got more specific questions that they want to ask about their own situations, then I would encourage you to contact your normal Henderson Logie contact to follow up there. We'll draw the webinar to a close now. Thank you all for joining us today. As I say, if you've got specific questions or have any specific HR related queries you want to ask, please contact Fiona and our HR team. Or anything else coming out of today's webinar, contact David or myself or your usual MHA Henderson Logie contact. With new guidance coming tomorrow, we expect there will be many follow-up questions, so we're planning a further webinar towards the end of next week to go through the further changes to the furlough scheme in more detail. But in the meantime, please stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you all again soon. Bye now.